My guest today is Dr. John Paul McGee. He was raised in Baltimore, Maryland, and John Paul McGee, at the age of 4, without formal training, began playing familiar hymns and church songs by ear. Aware of his special gift, Dr. McGee's mother made the sacrifices necessary to ensure that John received formal musical training and development. Dr. McGee studied piano and pipe organ at the new Shiloh School of Music, where the renowned headmaster was the late great Dr. Nathan Carter, and graduated in 2002 from the internationally acclaimed Arts Preparatory High School, Baltimore, for the arts, with a certificate in piano and opera studies. John's musical career has taken him around the globe as a keyboardist, vocal arranger, producer, and songwriter, collaborating with and appearing alongside popular gospel and secular artists from Patti Labelle to Najee, Stevie Wonder, the NFL Players Choir, and gospel legends Yolanda Adams, Donnie McClurkin, Kim Burrell, Corey Henry, Vashawn Mitchell, Ernest Pugh, and many others. His instrumental piano album, A Christmas with John Paul, released in 2014 with EPM Records. It yielded him the number 9 spot in the top 10 Billboard recording artists. Along with the release of his first published book, John released a solo piano album in 2019 entitled Elevate. Dr. John Paul McGee is the current assistant chair of piano at Berklee College of Music in Boston, Massachusetts, and artist in residence at Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. Dr. JP earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in music with a concentration in piano performance from Bethune-Cookman University, a Master of Arts in Religion degree from Liberty University, a Master of Sacred Music degree with a concentration in pipe organ performance from Emory University, and most recently a Doctorate of Ministry degree with a concentration in pastoral care and counseling from the Interdenominational Theological Center in Atlanta, Georgia. The groundbreaking research performed in his dissertation, A Sound for Distressed Souls, Gospel Jazzical as an NTU approach for coping with the vocational stressors of the Black pastor, investigates the healing and curative powers of his pianistic genre, Gospel Jazzical. Gospel Jazzical is a signature sound that unites 3 powerful genres, gospel, jazz, and classical, into a unique fusion that entertains, uplifts, and inspires all who hear. In 2022, John recorded and released the musical album Gospel Jazzical, featuring the John Paul McGee Trio, vocalists Wendy Henderson Wyatt, Amber Bullock, and Zebulon Ellis. In December 2022, the album was heard by the iconic musical legend Stevie Wonder, who immediately invited John and the trio to perform for his annual House of Toys benefit concert in Los Angeles, California, before a sold-out crowd of thousands. Through radio and streaming, John's first mainstream album, Gospel Jazzical Volume 1, has reached hundreds of thousands of listeners across the world and maintained its position in the top 100 jazz weekly charts for several weeks. On November 16, 2023, he released his second holiday album, A Gospel Jazzical Christmas. And within 2 weeks of its release, the album was number 3, most added on the Jazz Weekly, and number 34 on the Smooth Jazz Holiday charts. In May 2023, Berklee's assistant choir of piano, Dr. John Paul McGee, received an endorsement by Yamaha Artist Services and joined the Yamaha Artist family. This is an invitation-only designation bestowed by Yamaha to musical artists considered to be critically acclaimed in their instruments or genres. It is stated by online publication, The Urban Music Scene, that one experience with John's masterful musicianship and the way one hears gospel, jazz, and classical will never be the same. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Reading Circle microphones, Dr. John Paul McGee. John, good morning.
Good morning. What a pleasure it is to be here.
Man, it is a pleasure to have you on here. And matter of fact, I intentionally read your entire bio that you provided. Because I know a lot of times guests will say, no, don't read the whole thing. But no, I like to read the whole thing because I need folks in the listening audience to hear what, one, God can do. Secondly, what you can do if you put your mind and heart and spirit into it. Because a lot of people, like, I want somebody out there to listen to that and say, if John Paul can do it, so can I. And so that's why I like to read the entire Bible book. Man, God bless you, brother.
Blessings to you as well, my friend. It's such a great pleasure for everything to align for us to be able to have this conversation. Thank you so much for the invitation to come and share.
Well, like you said, everything did align because I knew of you, and I said, I talked to you a little bit about that whenever we chatted a couple of minutes ago. I knew of you as a child because, again, your aunt and her husband and my good friend Curtis and all of us swung together. We all used to hang together. And we would be at each other's houses because we'd go over each other's houses all the time. We'd do our apartments, our houses or whatever. We'd travel together. And I would hear Latita talking about her nephew.
Oh, my goodness.
Had never met you, but she would talk about you all the time. How proud she was of you, and you were doing this and you were doing that. So when I got the text from Kurt a couple of weeks ago, it's a funny story because Kurt's grandson goes to my school. And
wow.
I thought it was Kurt's son. I thought it was Kurt Jr. that was texting me. So I'm like, I see him one day at the school. I said, yo, man, I got your text and everything about JP. I just haven't had a chance to get back to you. And he's looking at me like I have three heads. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I said, that must have been from your dad. And so at that point, I text Kurt back, and that's when we started dialogue. And so he told me who you were. I said, oh, I know. And then a couple of weeks ago, I did wind up playing some of your music on the air. I think you were traveling at the time. We tried to do it for last week. You were traveling, but it worked out even better for this week.
It did, and I'm really excited to be here and grateful to Uncle Kurt because, you've been a part of my village since I can remember. These are people who've known me since before I've known myself. So it was just a really great time that we were having in South Africa, and we were listening to the album on its release date. Uncle Kurt was like, well, I got a friend who does radio, and I'm like, well, please connect me, and he did just that. And so here we are. Really, really thankful to be with you this morning.
Well, same here. So I'll tell you what, I don't have a set question list that I use, but there is one question I do always start the interview off with, and that is, and it says here in your bio that at the age of 4, without formal training, you began playing familiar hymns and church songs by ear. Let's talk a little bit about that. Like, if you can think back to, like, how did that all come about in terms of what did you do? Just jump on the piano one day and just start playing, or how did everything come about? Because I know for me, I'm trained in terms of reading more so than ear. My ear has gotten better over the years, but I always was envious of my organist friends and piano friends who, no matter what came down, they can just sit there and play. Because for me, I had to have music in front of me. And like I said, I've gotten better over the years. But how did this all begin with you?
I am a product, as many of our Black musicians, of the African American church. And legend has it that when I was a toddler, about 2 years old, that when my mother and grandmother would take me to church, that I would sit in the pew and I would be mimicking the actions of the musicians by playing and using my fingers on the back part of the wooden pew. And so I would do that on a Sunday-to-Sunday basis. And then after I would leave church, I would go to my grandmother's house. Typically, that's where Sunday dinner was. And, of course, this is Latita's mother. And then she had a little small keyboard in her home. It sounded more like an accordion than a keyboard, but, it is what it is. So I would go home and play that at her house. And then my mother had a small house organ at her house. And so I was always surrounded, even as a toddler, very young. And I vaguely remember, like 2, 3 years old, these instruments. And so one day, my mother was in the kitchen washing dishes. I'm out on the house organ, just kind of playing as I would normally would. And then my mother started singing. And then she realized, wait a minute, I'm singing the song that he's playing. And I think that it was at that point that she really recognized that this was a special divine impartation, if you would, of a gift. And so from that point on, she did everything that she could to make sure that she cultivated and developed my gift as a musician. And what many people may not know is that as a young child, I suffered from extreme stage fright. So even though I had this gift, I never wanted to really use it. I didn't want to play in church. I didn't want to play in front of audiences, any of that type of thing. And so my mom pushed me and others pushed me to do so. And my childhood career dream was actually to be a commercial airline pilot. It started off wanting to be a bus driver. And then I realized that bus drivers didn't make the type of money that I needed to make to have the lifestyle I wanted to have. So we changed modes of transportation. And then I wanted to be a commercial airline pilot and just became extremely enamored with the thought of being able to fly a jumbo jet. Had no clue that probably 20, 30 years later that, 3-4 days a week I would be on jets and I would be literally traveling all over the world to share the gift of music with people. So all of those things came together as well. So that's how the journey really began in terms of this oral beginning with music. And I really wouldn't trade it. I began to learn to read music, interestingly enough, by playing clarinet in the school band. So I began to read treble clef. And then by the time I started investigating what bass clef was, I didn't understand why the notes bass clef were different than they were in the treble clef. So wound up getting involved in music lessons and theory and began to partner the knowledge of Western notation with this oral beginning that I had from this immersive experience, shall I say, even this kind of embodied experience that I had in the Black church. And then, really it just goes on from there, studying in school as an accompanist and then studying pipe organ and piano externally from my regular school, then going to Baltimore School of the Arts and studying opera for 4 years, the piano double major, and then pivoting as a college student to go to Bethune-Cookman University, HBCU in Daytona Beach, Florida, where I was a piano performance major, jazz piano minor, and religion and philosophy minor. And, beat goes on and on. It's, couple stints in seminary, then, wound up at Emory, doing a Master of Sacred Music with a concentration in pipe organ performance, a minor in jazz, and a concentration as well in global worship studies. And so, really this experience of music throughout my life has been this composite of this oral tradition by ear, this improvisatory approach, as well as an understanding of reading, both in the traditional Western notation and in lead sheet notation that we do in jazz. And so, it all kind of came to a head in the last probably 10 or so years with me moving toward artistry as a solo artist. I never really thought that in the gospel genre I could survive as an instrumental artist. And one would say that it's not true that I can't, but, one thing I realized is that to limit myself just to the gospel genre would keep me from engaging a much, much larger audience of persons who may not necessarily be churchgoers, but still need inspiration, still need healing, still need to hear music that inspires. And so last year, I was able to release my first mainstream album on a jazz label, Jazz Urbane Recordings, based in Boston, Massachusetts, and, really bridging the gap between gospel jazz and classical. And we charted there on Jazz Week, and now we're charting with our Christmas record that just released, charting number 34 on the smooth jazz charts and climbing. And, the beat goes on and on. Played for Stevie Wonder last year. It's just been a really great, it's been a great couple of years, and really exploring what music has to offer and what the world has to offer through the music that I give.
Well, man, I'll tell you what. Now, I've gotten away over years. I've gotten away from saying I was freaked out. But I am always amazed that when paths cross, how similar stories can be. Now, listening audience as well as JP, I am not making this up, but you said originally you wanted to be a bus driver. As a child, when folks would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I'd say the same thing. I wanted to be a bus driver. And then, same just like you, then I wanted to be a pilot. I actually was going to go into the Air Force from school, and I wanted to go in and fly. And because of my vision, they said, if your vision is not what we needed to be in terms of our standard, you won't be able to fly. So I told the recruiter that I'm not coming in then. But then I ultimately did go in, and I was a jet engine mechanic for a number of years in the Air National Guard. And I chose that because I wanted to be around the aircraft. Now, for me, and again, the story is very similar because I remember my mother always wanted to play. My mother played clarinet or flute in the band when she was in high school, but she never took any formal lessons. And so one day she comes in, I was 8 years old, my sister was 6, and she comes in and says, which one of you or both of you, who wants to take piano lessons? My sister said, absolutely not me. And I turned around and said, me. So I actually was trained from 8 to 18 for 10 years, playing classical music and so forth, but it didn't take off for me until I started playing for the church and playing in my high school. And because I'm listening to you in terms of all the doors and avenues music opened for you. For you, those of you in the listening audience, and this is why it's sad that in many of the schools, a lot of the arts for budgets and this, that, and the other was taken away, because music, if you're a musician or if you're a student of music, it opens so many doors for you, as well as it impacts the rest of the curriculum. Because the fight that we have a lot of times with the superintendent is, yes, music is important because music impacts math, music impacts language arts, it can get into science, it can get into social studies. So I'm listening to your story and I'm sitting here like almost jaw dropped in the similarities. Wow. My first job at AT&T, because I had a job prior, but my first real job per se, whenever I left college, the reason I got that job was because I could type fast. Because my first job at AT&T was a secretary. I was hired non-management because at that time they didn't have management positions open. But the recruiter, I thought I was hot stuff, JP. I mean, I graduated from William Penn. And Uncle Kurt, you're Kurt. We were there together. And the recruiter came. He looks at my resume, and I thought I was hot stuff. I just knew I was. He says, I see here you can type. I said, yes. He says, would you be willing to start non-management and then work your way into management? Because we don't have a management position at the moment. Where I'm going with the story is the reason that I could type so fast was because of my fingers from playing the piano. Had it not been from the training of me playing the piano, my fingers would not probably have been as fast as they were on the typewriter. But it was that started my career, my corporate career. I played for the church for 30 years, from the time I was like 14 to 44, somewhere around in there. So that's why I said, as soon as I knew we were going to do this interview, I got excited. I was like, I'm talking to another musician now, musician. In terms of let's go back to, because your mom said you made sacrifice, because that's another thing people need to realize, that, even back, you're younger than I am, but even back in the time when piano lessons were $10, $15, $20, $30 a week or whatever they were, I think they were like $10 a week or whatever. That still, in some respects, depending on your family economics, could be a hardship. So when I see here that your mom makes sacrifices, because you got to take to lessons, you got to find teachers, you have to buy the instruments, the music, and everything that goes. Talk a little bit about that. Because I see you have that noted in your biography about, Dr. McGee's mother made the sacrifices necessary to ensure that John received formal music training and development. Talk about that.
One of the things that I believe is a marker of a great parent is when they recognize and see the potential in their child. They don't let anything stop them from making sure that their child gets everything they need to realize it. And I believe that my mother is the utter manifestation of that, because my mom was a single mom. And even though my dad was in my life, I'll say, on the periphery in terms of support, my mom bore the majority of the load. She had a formidable career as a outside pharmaceutical saleswoman back in the late 70s, early 80s, and a black woman in pharmaceutical sales, that was really not a common thing at that point. But when she split from my father and moved back to Baltimore, and I started growing, 3, 4, 5 years old, my mom made the conscious decision to leave pharmaceutical sales and go into another area of corporate America, which I know now was not as gainfully employing as external sales, pharmaceutical sales would be. But she wanted to make sure that she was around to raise me, to cultivate me, and it wasn't just in the hands of my grandmother. And so, and my aunt, who's now deceased, my Aunt Diane. And so, growing up, my mom made sure, if it was an instrument that I needed for school, she got it purchased somehow. If it was, summer camp, she made sure that I got, enrolled. When it came time to take lessons at New Shiloh School of Music to enrich the things that I was doing on a daily basis in public school, because I am a product of public schools, but I'm a product of public magnet schools. schools. So I went to Sudbrook Magnet Middle School, which was like the number one performing arts magnet in the area. And I went to Baltimore School for the Arts, which is nationally renowned and regarded as one of the world's most famed art schools. Jada Pinkett Smith is a graduate. Tupac Shakur was a graduate. Brisha Webb, famed actor, is a graduate, and the list goes on and on. And so, you know, she had to pay tuition in order for me to go to Baltimore School for the Arts because we didn't live within the city district. And so I didn't know all, you know, the breadth and length of all of the financial sacrifices that she was making, and even the sacrifices of time. You know, I was playing in church. I was becoming very involved in ministry and very involved in the gospel industry as a teenager. And my mom was not one of those cast it off to someone else to take me here and there. You know, as she jokingly says now, she was my personal taxi cab for many, many years, taking me from here to there and, you know, really putting her life on the back burner, or shall I say surrendering maybe even her own personal ambitions, desires, and dreams and goals to make sure that I became who I am still becoming. And so that is why in my bio, that is one of the first things that's noted, because, you know, you are right. I try my best to put the most important stuff at the front of the bio so that when I go places and do things, people don't read the whole thing. But one of the things I have become, you know, really appreciative of is the opportunity to inspire. But the reason why she's toward the beginning of my bio is because I will forever, while she lives and even after, I will forever honor and be grateful for every sacrifice that she made for me to be able to emerge into who I am in the various multifaceted areas of what I do. She's the GOAT, the greatest of all time for sure. And my Aunt Latita as well. You know, it was a village. You know, the sisters, my Aunt Diane, my Aunt Latita, my grandmother, they all joined together to really make sure that, you know, I had the upbringing, you know, and the training that was necessary. My Uncle Paul, Aunt Latita, you know, my mother didn't believe in paying me for grades, but they were the ones that paid me for my A's. So, you know, when I brought home A's on my report card, you know, in my mind, I got rich every quarter because they were going to, but it certainly was a motivator, you know.
I know that's right. And the reason I brought that up, and thank God for your mom and your tribe and your village and all that. Thank God for them. That's why I brought that up, because a lot of times, you know, I do the same thing. I always make sure I give credit to my mom and my dad, because without them, there would have been no me and where I am at. So the fact that you put that there, that's one of the reasons I brought it up as I read that, because again, a lot of times we get to these positions, John Paul, and not a lot of people, not us, but there are people who don't recognize and acknowledge the shoulders they stood on to get there. They think it was all about them, that they pulled themselves up by their own bootstraps, that it was all about, they did it all by themselves. But the truth of the matter is no. In order for you to do it, like I said, my mom always wanted to take piano lessons. She couldn't as a child at the time. She played a little bit by ear, that she'd horse around on the piano a little bit, but she made sure that I was able to go. My dad was, I can remember let me see, I had 3 music teachers over the time that were officially my music teachers. I had Miss Fulcher, I had Mr. Siebert, and then I had Isidore Freeman. Then when I got to high school, I had Fran Kubian. But it was, because I remember my lessons with Isidore Freeman was on Friday evenings from like 6 to 6:30. I can still see getting in the car going over there now. But it was, like you said, it was and now you're talking, black children, because that's not necessarily the norm. Like for me in my neighborhood, I was the only one that played piano. I was the only one that played piano on my block. And, you know, they would call me in sometime. I'd be out there playing baseball and they'd call me in and said, you got to come in and practice your piano. And I'm like, ugh. But again, and I'm working my way here because I'm going through this list of schools here. In terms of an African-American male, now that's one thing. Yes, there's no question we are musically gifted. But now you're talking about formal training, and you're talking about some really, quote unquote, prestigious Ivy League schools. What was that like for you to be in these various schools as an African-American male?
You know, well, my first stint at an Ivy League, or something close to an Ivy League in terms of being in school, was at Emory University. But when I left Baltimore School for the Arts, where I had been a vocal opera major for 4 years and had done, you know, Tanglewood as an opera singer, had done Washington Opera's Institute for Young Singers at the Kennedy Center, I really knew that I did not want to pursue opera as a career. And so I pivoted away from opera and decided to get outside of the more Western European Anglo-Saxon approach to music and really further immerse myself in an African diasporic consciousness by going to a historically Black college university in Daytona Beach, Bethune-Cookman College in Daytona. So, I went to Bethune-Cookman, and that 4 years was extremely transformative. But as many HBCUs are, as HBCUs go, most of our HBCU music programs don't really focus in on African diasporic music, jazz, soul, R&B, and the like. Most of them still focus in squarely on the classical canon and tradition because, historically, the HBCU was the place where African Americans could go for some sort of equivalency, right? And so that which we may not have had access to, whether by being allowed to attend or even financially to be able to afford to go, we could get it at the HBCU. So I did, classical piano performance degree at the HBCU. And my first time after, going to seminary a few times, getting into a musical environment that was Ivy League or similar, was the Ivy League of the South when I went to Emory University and studied pipe organ performance there. And when I graduated from that particular program, I was the third African-American to ever graduate from that program in its 25 history, and the last to graduate because the program ended after I graduated. And so it's very interesting, to take kind of a more backside of the mountain journey educationally from the institutions. I mean, of course, in the African-American community, our HBCUs, the Interdenominational Theological Center and the like, are very highly regarded. But to now be front and center teaching at or administrating for some of the world's most regarded universities is an absolute dream. So, to be the assistant chair of piano at Berklee College of Music, the world's preeminent institution for contemporary music study, to be an artist scholar in residence at Yale University, which is indeed an Ivy League, and to also share still with my community as an adjunct professor at Virginia Union University and at Simmons College of Kentucky. I have a lot of jobs, no pun intended. My uncle, Paul, is Jamaican, and we often joke in the family that, I got jobs out the ears, but I really have a passion for giving back and for sharing. And, even though I'm now, on publications and online, magazines and print magazines and all this type of stuff, I still want to make sure that I'm giving back to my community and sharing with our institutions as well. So, that's kind of the journey toward the Ivy League. It wasn't as a student, it's more so now as an influencer and an educator.
But that's even more critical. I mean, yeah, as a student for sure, but the fact that you're there as an educator, because I've taught at the college level, and I always got the biggest kick out of when this is what I would do. I would get to class early, because this was when I was younger as well. I would get to class early, and I'd just kind of stand around, and I would wait as all the students came in. And most of the time, my class was white, mostly white kids. And I'd just kind of hang out until class time, and then I'd go stand behind the desk and let them know class is about to begin. You would have to see the looks on that, because I was at a university that did not have a lot of black people on it. So you would have to see, let alone in the faculty. So you'd have to see the expressions on their face when you're the professor? Yes, I'm the professor. So I'm saying all that to say, in many instances on these various schools, there's not a big black presence there, especially on the instructor side. So that's why I say that's even more critical, because for the black students who do go, they do need to see someone who looks like them, again, to say, hey, wait a minute, I can do this. I see him. That's a role model. And it's important that you're giving back. I mean, not for nothing. That's how me and Kurt met. When Kurt and I were undergrads, we were going through business administration. We were the only two blacks in the program. There was a third. There was a young lady. And when we tried to say, all three of us, let's get together and work together. The young lady had nothing to do with me and Kurt. So me and Kurt hooked up. And the two of us have been fast friends and close friends ever since. But that's going back to the 80s. And we were the only two going through that particular major at that time. So I know how it can be on college campuses. And so when you start now and I've done work at Harvard, I've done work at Princeton. When you're the one in charge, yeah, folks are kind of looking like, is he supposed to be here? Yes, you're supposed to be there. Now, I'm in terms of so I'm listening to your voice. What are you, bass, baritone?
I could sit in the opera world. I was considered a bass, a bass baritone. Even though my voice matured young, it was headed towards that basso profondo thing that Simon Estes and others who sing a lot of the bass reps do. Of course, in the Black church, we really don't acknowledge basses, and so we got to scream the tenor line. So I can do that too. I've done a lot of vocal production for various companies and artists in the gospel industry. But I do sing, and I've been bringing back kind of this jazz-ish, soulish style and quality of singing in my last two records, particularly this last record as an ode and a nod to the late Tony Bennett. I decided to sing Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. And because I hailed myself more as an instrumentalist than a singer, I struggled to do that. But as I read the reviews from the record, I'm seeing that people are really enjoying it. So, I guess I need to sing on every record from now on.
There's something else that you said.
I had a gig in Boston this coming week for Jazz Boston, and, they specifically said, we need you to sing. And so this week they had somebody else singing Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, so I had to try to figure out an arrangement of the Christmas song, the chestnuts roasting on the open fire, so we're going to hit that too.
All right, now.
This week and next week. Yeah.
So, you said something else that was critical too. Even though you decided not to go in opera, but you were exposed to it. And see, again, that teacher that I had mentioned, Fran Coogan, when I got to high school, that's when my music world really opened up. That's when I really got exposed to all different types of genre. And opera was one of them, because I made the all-state choir as well as the regional choir. And that's when I got opened up to Carmen and La Traviata and so forth and so on. The exposure to it, the same thing like Jerry Mulligan, I got exposed to him, a jazz saxophone player. So when I heard David Sanborn, that's whenever I really started getting into jazz. Where I'm going with this is we need to be exposed to everything. Now, we can major in one, or we can have a preference, or we can have a favorite or a specialty, but we need to be exposed to all of it. And again, I'm going to go back to the fact that we're African American, and in many instances, not all the time, but in many instances, we're not exposed to things like opera or jazz or eclectic or hard rock or country, when we really kind of need to be exposed to all of it.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer that my journey has included all of these various genres and subgenres of music, and formal training even in them, so that I could employ that today. I always and often wondered, as I was matriculating through at least the initial phases of my educational process, educational career, how is all of this stuff going to come together and work in a way that makes sense? And so I needed formal opera training so that I could be a vocal producer for albums. I needed classical training because, of course, at some point I would be playing classical music. I would eventually, at 36, 37 years old, assume a chair position at the world's largest college of world's most renowned, I won't say largest, but world's most renowned college of contemporary music study and classical music study. And I would need to have those things in order to be credible in leading my 43 faculty and the 742 piano students that we have in the department. And so, this is an all things work together type of thing. The whole journey is making sense. I needed to know how planes work so I wouldn't be afraid to get on them. I took a 15-hour one-way trip to South Africa back in November and returned. And then in January, I'm going back again. I don't deal with the anxiety of flying like a lot of my colleagues and counterparts do, because, I learned how planes work. I learned how they operate. And at the end of the day, if it's my time, it's just my time anyway. But all of these, the training, the theological training will be necessary in order for me to be, an adjunct professor in seminaries and help train pastors and church music leaders in an understanding of worship from an Afrocentric and African diasporic perspective. It will be necessary for me to matriculate through areas of pastoral ministry, so I know how the systems of church, both black and otherwise, tend to work. And so all of these things have really melded together and really to create, and in all humility, I say, this Renaissance type of man that I've become that is able to engage and share in various spheres and sectors of influence, and to be able to do that intelligently. I need to know the business of music, so being with Bashan and all of these other various leaders in the industry helped to, train me what to look for in contracts, need to know how to engage with management. All of these things have really made a difference throughout the career. And at certain points, it didn't make sense. I didn't understand why my journey was taking the path it is. But, at this point, I'm like, okay, I get it. And, and still with this great expectation that the best is yet to come still. It's still only the beginning.
And see, I'm a firm believer in there is no such thing as a wasted experience, because you're right in terms of everything working together for good. I told you the reason I got hired at AT&T was because I could type fast. The reason I could type fast was because I played the piano. So, I mean, it's like there is no such thing as a wasted experience. And I heard you just mention Vajon, because that's where I was going with my next question. Now, I can tell you right now, Dr. McGee, I'm not one who gets starstruck, because for me, people are people are people are people are people. And I tell people in terms of celebrities, the only difference is they get paid a heck of a lot more money and are seen by a heck of a lot more people. But other than that, that's their jobs. Their jobs get seen by more people and they get paid more. But other than that, they're a human just like I am. So generally, when I get in the presence of these folks, I will let them know immediately how much I love their work or respect their work or this, that, and the other. But as far as going crazy with, oh my God, Stevie Wonder touched me, I'll never wash this hand again. As far as that kind of nonsense, no, I don't get into all of that. But talk to me a little bit about, because you have a laundry list here. You got Patti Labelle, Najee, Stevie Wonder, the NFL Players Choir, Yolanda Adams, Donnie McClurky, Kim Burrell, Corey Henry, Vashawn Mitchell, Ernest Pugh. Talk to me a little bit about what is it like for you when you're with them?
These open doors, came at an unexpected rate. So I used to work as a vocal production for the late Choice Mead in Jacksonville, Florida, who owned a record label called Intro Gospel. And when I was working for Intro Gospel, that's how I got exposed to Bruce Parham, and that's how I got exposed to Alvin Darling and so many other artists. I remember walking through the hallways at GMWA and running into Ernest Pugh and him saying, to me, that I've listened to you, I've been following you, I've heard your music for many years. He offered me a record deal, and that's how my first Christmas record was released back in 2014. That made it to number 9 on the Billboard charts during the holiday season. And through my big brother and mentor, Damian Sneed, was introduced to Kim Burrell, who became a quick and fast friend of mine. And then over the years, my work with Dr. Teresa Hairston, who is the founder of the Gospel Heritage Foundation, the Gospel Heritage Praise and Worship Conference, became extremely close to Vashawn Mitchell. That's how I met Richard Smallwood, and, through Cassandra Lewis, who was season 4 finalist on The Voice, who I met during my college career. I was introduced to Najee while I was in college doing vocal production. Through my relationship with Choice Mead, my group at the time was invited to do background vocals for the Super Bowl Gospel Fest. And so that's how we wound up working with Patti Labelle and doing background for her. And, it's just, all of those names, that Pastor Donnie is like an uncle to me. These people in the industry, like you said, who are, extremely well-renowned in their own right. But, I've been able to develop real relationships with them. And indeed, they're amazing human beings. And all of us as human beings are flawed and faulty. So we all got our stuff. But, I've been blessed to work with, know, and engage with so many various artists. Corey Henry is like a brother to me. And, last year, meeting and playing for Stevie and running into him again in another conference. And he's like, man, I told you to call me. These real relationships that are, not just, that are not just leading me into a different space of my career, but really offering me support in my humanity, right? I don't look at relationships from a utilitarian, usury perspective. I believe in relationships that are reciprocal. And so I've just been blessed to be in relationship with many of these people who the world sees as celebrities, but I see them as family. And so that's kind of the short. I can't even really remember everybody on the list, but it's a blessing to be in connection and community with such amazing people, and to, in a sense, be regarded as sharing in that same ilk is extremely humbling.
I know that's right. Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually put on one of your pieces, Christmas Time is Here. Is that from the latest one or from the earlier one?
Christmas Time is Here is from the latest CD, and very interesting anecdote with Christmas Time is Here. The singer, Lori Williams, who I had met in the Atlanta jazz scene, because that's where I live. I go back and forth between Boston and Atlanta. She was coming in for a rehearsal at my producer, Larry Wilson's home, where we were recording. I was headed out on lunch break, and she says, "Hey, y'all here recording Christmas album?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "I want to sing on it." And I was like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah, I want to sing on it." I'm like, "Okay, we'll figure it out." She's like, "No, I want to sing on it like right now." and so she went into the booth, put on the headphones, and I was like, "Okay, well, what song are we going to do?" And it wound up being Christmas Time is Here, and we did it in one take. So, hopefully everybody likes the one take, because that's all we did. That's all we had to choose from. But that's how Christmas Time is Here even wound up on a gospel jazz.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to put that on now. If this booth is working right, if the board is working right, you ought to be able to hear it. If not, if you start getting loud noises or screeches or something, let me know and I'll rearrange it. But you should be able to hear it as I'm playing it. Can you hear that?
Christmas time.
Okay, great.
Is here. Happiness and cheer, fun for all that children call their favorite time of year. Snowflakes in the air, carols everywhere, olden times and ancient rhymes of love and dreams to share. Sleigh bells in the air, beauty everywhere, Yuletide by the fireside, and joyful memories there. Oh, Christmas time is here, families drawing near. Oh, that we will always see such spirit through the year. would always see such spirit through the
All right, for those of you out in the listening audience, give a finger snap to Christmas Time is Here. That was Dr. John Paul McGee on the keyboards. And what was the young lady who sang it?
Lori Williams.
Lori, and you said one take.
One take. So that was one take. So I heard some notes. I heard some notes in that take. I'm like, because I hadn't listened to it since then. But it was heartfelt. It was soulful, and I think it really communicates the essence of Christmas. One of my friends actually just texted me. It was like, they want to go bake a cake and be by the fireside and the Christmas tree and drink wine and all of that type of stuff as they were listening to Christmas Time is Here. So I guess it's accomplishing its goal.
It is, because I got a text as well saying, wow, that's beautiful. And it's interesting that you say what you just said about as you just listened to it, hearing a note. Do you ever? Because I had got a couple of jazz CD releases, and there are times where I'll play it, and it's like, wow, I can't believe I played that. I know that had to be God coming through me, because I don't even remember hitting that lick. I don't remember putting that chord or that instrumentation together, and yet when I go back and listen to it, it's like, wow, it's not bad. Do you ever listen to yours and it's like, is that really me?
I've had some moments recently where I have had some, wow, is that really me moments? Because, the more you invest in your artistry, the more you invest in your craft, whether it's preaching, music, art, business, whatever, the more you invest into it, the more it returns to you, right? It's this whole principle of sowing and reaping. You sow, you reap. And so over the last 2 years, I've had the blessed privilege of, being able to really be completely immersed in the things that matter most to me. So education, ministry, and music. And so all three of those areas have really, I've seen some significant shift and transformation, but in music particularly, having a Yamaha piano at my exposure every day in my office, as a part of the educational process of teaching other people, I'm also practicing more as well, so that I can, deliver more information. So as I've grown over this last really 2 or so years specifically, I'm listening to some of the stuff that I've recorded and played, and I hear a significant difference in my sound. So, yeah, I have had those moments where I'm listening back on the playback, and I'm like, who is that playing? Oh, my goodness, that is me. And so I typically don't like to listen to myself.
Right.
But recently I've been listening from, a perspective of, wow, there's been some significant change. And, not to say that what it was before is bad. I would hope not. After starting at 4, I would hope to be good.
Right.
I would be great even. But I'm really excited that I still can hear the growth in the journey.
Exactly. And that's the key word right there is growth. Now, I'll tell you what, there is a movie called Keep the Faith, Baby, and it's about Adam Clayton Powell Jr. And in the movie, he's being interviewed by a journalist, and he asks Adam Clayton Powell, what was your favorite piece of legislation? And Powell's response was, that's like asking me what would be my favorite child. I love them all. It's like, so I'm going to ask you that same question. Out of all of the work that you have out there, which one, if you have one, is a favorite?
I think that Gospel Jazzical Christmas is actually my favorite so far relative to how I performed. I recorded this record over a period of 2 days back in August with no rehearsals prior to those 2 days with my trio. Yamaha delivered the piano on Monday afternoon. We rehearsed on Monday afternoon into the evening, and we started recording on Tuesday, and by Wednesday evening, 4 or 5 o'clock, we were finished. And to hear that this record really it has that kind of sultry, smoky seasoning on it. It doesn't sound like it was thrown together. It doesn't, it sounds like it's settled. And part of that is the fact that my artistry is in a different place of settling. And then, the vibe with me and the guys that I work with has really congealed and gelled over the last year or so that we've been working together. So I think a Gospel Jazzical Christmas really represents something a little different for me in my journey.
All right, I'll tell you what. So that I see here, the Lord will make a way somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Was that was live? That one was live?
That was live at my recording, the live recording I did for Gospel Jazz School Volume 1. So I recorded that live back in April of 2022. And so as a part of my dissertation project for my doctoral degree, I wanted to investigate the relationship between gospel jazz and classical music. And so on that first volume, I took a lot of familiar gospel spiritual Christian standards and made them into jazz arrangements for myself, acoustic bass and drums and a couple of saxophone features. And so that was kind of the Lord Make a Way Somehow was really the blues kind of soulful thing that we hear in terms of chord changes that emerge from those types of traditional call and response types of hymns that we sing a lot in the more traditional African-American church context.
Oh, absolutely, because that's what I'm getting ready to get on. All right, let me read it. Is there a particular song you'd like to hear? Because otherwise I'm going to put that one on next.
Let's see. Is there a particular song I'd like to hear from Volume 1?
Either one. Anything, any of your work. Is there anything in particular you want? Because just like I just did with Christmas Time Is Here, I'll play another one. Is there any particular favorite that you want to hear?
Well, since I'm trying to promote a Christmas record, I want everybody, of course, to go download Volume 1. But since we're in the Christmas season, let's see which one from the Gospel Jazzical Christmas. Let's do Little Drummer Boy.
Oh, what I'm telling you, man, we are kindred spirits. Little Drummer Boy, and still to this day, I can't watch that cartoon without crying. And even sometimes listening to the song, because of the story behind it, the whole thing about him, he didn't have anything to give, and yet, he gave, his instrument. He gave playing on his instrument. So it's something about that story that always gets me. I don't care how old I am, or even when I was younger, I couldn't watch that cartoon because I'd start tearing up. So it's, again, interesting that you would pick that particular song, just like the pilot and the bus driver. It's like I said, I don't get freaked out anymore because I know the power of God. I know the Spirit. I know how the universe and all that works. So it doesn't hurt. But the fact that you mentioned Drummer Boy, and that's like my all-time favorite Christmas song. So yes, we will get that on, and we're going to get that going as of right now. Brother, I love it. I love it. I tell you what, your aunt was right. Latita was right, because when you were little, she would always say you were special. She was right. She's absolutely 100% correct. And we've come down to the time in the show now, because this is what I'm going to do, because I have two formats. I have the music format and the talk show format. So, and certainly throughout the music format hours, especially during the Christmas season, I'll be playing your work. I'll let you know now. So each Saturday morning between now and Christmas, and maybe even thereafter, I'll be playing the Christmas album, and then some of the other stuff I'll throw into my playlist. At this point, you have the opportunity to promote anything or shout out, promote. The only thing you cannot say is a dollar amount. But in terms of websites, in terms of where you're going to be, and we didn't even talk about your book, so we'll talk about that next time you come on. Websites, where you're going to be, how folks can get in touch with you, the name of all your work. You can promote anything. Like I said, I'm going to shut the mic off, and the only thing you cannot say is a dollar amount. But anything short of that, I'm turning off my mic, and the mic is yours to promote. Starting right now.
Hey, everybody, this is John Paul McGee. I'm so grateful to Marc Medley for the opportunity to come and share here on both ways. Support a Dr. Jazz for the release of this year by going to Amazon, Tidal, Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, and download wherever you stream music. Make sure you support it. Please follow me on social media. I am JP McGee on Instagram. I am JP McGee on TikTok. John Paul McGee on Facebook as well. Make sure you support the project. Also get Dr. Jazz Vibes #1. And while it's the Christmas season, go on ahead and download A Christmas with John Paul from back in 2014. Shout out to my family who is on listening, my mom. Shout out to my dad as well. Shout out to Aunt Tina and Uncle Paul, all of my family. Shout out to Uncle Kurt, who just said he's going to send me the bill for setting up this opportunity for me to be here with you, Mark. And I'm really excited for upcoming performances this week. I'll be ministering in Atlanta at the Life Church of Atlanta. Next week, on Wednesday, I'm with Jazz Boston for their annual holiday concert. Then Thursday, WGBH in Boston. Then Friday, I'll be at the Tabernacle Church for their Christmas cantata in McDonough, Georgia. Then Tuesday, the 19th, Keystone Corner with Adam Blackstone in Baltimore, Maryland. And then the 24th, which is Christmas Eve, I'll be there with the trio at Baltimore, Maryland. Doing three concerts, 7th to 15, 9th to 15, 11:30 there in Baltimore. Check out our website, www.johnpaulmcgee.com, to be able to follow to get more information. Thank you all for having me today. I'm looking forward to being back with you, Mark.
Man, I'm looking forward to having you back. And for listening audience, let me make sure you get the spelling of his name correctly. It is www. You said the whole name, John Paul, right?
The whole name.
So it's www.JOHNPAULMCGEE. Don't throw the H in there. MC.
Do not throw that H in my name. It does not exist. And that's one of the McGee pet peeves.
Yeah, I know it's got to be. I know it's got to be, because I'm just saying, like, I'm Mark with a C, and of course the common spelling is K, but that's what I get that every now and again. Folks will spell my name with a K, and I'm kind of like that same way. No, it's Mark with a C. So I know when you start getting into the McCoys and the McGees, there's a couple of different spellings. So you definitely want to not put the H in there. It's John Paul McGee, MCGEE. You can look him up on YouTube. All of his music is in all of the different music sites. I'm sure Apple Music, so forth and so on. Support this young brother. I can't wait to meet you. Like I said,
I can't wait to meet you in person as well. I'm also featured in this month. The album is reviewed in this month's edition of Jersey Jazz.
That's right.
There in New Jersey as well.
Matter of fact, talk a little bit about that. Because I meant to bring that up. Because matter of fact, when you texted me the other day, I said we're going to talk about that on air. Talk a little bit about that, and then we'll close out.
It's very interesting. I'm really grateful for my publicist, Jim Igo, who has done PR for you name it in the jazz industry, as well as my radio promoter, Lisa Reedy, who's doing an amazing job working this record, while she also has Christian Sands and several other more established jazz artists who are out here making it happen, getting me interviews, getting me the opportunities to be in written publications. I don't know how I wound up in Jersey Jazz. I just say that the people that are on my team, shout out to my manager, Willie Nelson, for all that he does to help orchestrate and keep me together 3 and 4 cities a week sometimes. And, I'm just grateful to have an amazing team. I'm surrounded by great people who who have helped to get me exposed, and looking forward to what's next.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to do everything I can to get you exposed as well. Anybody I can share you with on all my social media sites and so forth and so on. Between all of my sites, I have almost 30,000 people. So I'm definitely going to get you out there to my folks as well. And again, you're welcome to come back on here. I record the show and I'm going to send you the links. And once you get them, you share them with whoever you like or whatever you want to do with it. They're yours. I'm going to send you an MP3 link as well as is housed and archived on my YouTube channel. So what you do with it, once you get it, feel free.
Thank you so much, Mark.
All right, man, we're going to close. I'm going to close back out on Drummer Boy. I'm putting that back on as we close out. So I tell you what, man, have a wonderfully blessed day. And like I said, I can't wait to meet you.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.